So the last presentation we were looking at aggregate demand. What we need to move on to this time is aggregate supply. So this time, we're looking at the output of the country in terms of the goods and services produced by businesses up and down the country. If we were graphing this, again, we'll have real GDP on the horizontal axis and price level on the vertical axis. Sort of going back to Unit 1 when we looked at basic supply curves, they were upward sloping because prices increased, businesses were willing and able to produce more goods and services. For example, higher price means more potential to make profits. Aggregate supply is exactly the same. As prices go up, businesses are more keen to produce more, so output increases. Difference with this one is AS, aggregate supply, is the total supply of all goods and services within the economy. What I want to introduce now is assuming that we're at this point here. So P1, Y1. We can see that as price increases above P1, output will increase above Y1. As price falls below P1, output will fall below Y1. What we need to introduce now is what will make an aggregate supply curve shift. What I'm going to assume first of all is that we're looking at a short run aggregate supply curve. This obviously can shift immediately in the short run, and this will shift as business costs change. So a shift in this is linked to a change in business costs. If costs fall, AS will shift to the right. So in other words, it will shift to SR AS1. If costs were to increase, and we move to SR AS2. Now let's think very quickly about what can lead to business costs changing. So if we go from SRAS to SRS1, we can see that at P1, businesses are now willing and able to produce Y2 rather than Y1. Some costs that we could change, or lower in this case, to create this change could be a change in wage rates. As wage rates fall, business costs will fall. Obviously, as taxes on businesses fall, again, their costs will fall. We've got raw material costs, so normally the price of oil is heavily linked to output as it's used in the production of most goods and services. We've got utility bills. So as these costs fall, supply would increase to SRAS1. If these costs increase, supply will shift to SRAS2. What we need to build up now is a long run aggregate supply curve. So we've seen how supply can shift in the short run. Let's think about how it can shift in the long run. Now we've got two different schools of thought, and we'll introduce both of them. So again, we've got price level, and we've got real GDP. Let's label this axis as well so we can see it on both. A classical economist will show a vertical LRAS curve. So that's the classical view. A Keynesian economist will view LRAS in this shape. Now what I'm going to draw at the bottom of the page is a basic production possibility boundary. So we can see we've got a country here that can produce either product A, product B, or a combination of them both. The production possibility boundary represents the maximum that the economy is capable of producing. An LRAS curve shows exactly the same thing. So if we look at the classical LRAS curve, this economy cannot produce beyond Y1. It's the absolute maximum that this economy is capable of making. If we look at the Keynesian LRAS curve, we can see that the vertical part towards the end, again, represents the maximum this economy is able to make. The difference is a Keynesian economist would say that in the long run, we may not achieve to our potential. A classical economist would assume in the long run that we always achieve our potential. So a Keynesian economist, for example, would always assume that potentially in the long run, we may not achieve our production possibility boundary. Let's take an example why. We know that a PPB is based on 4 different factors of production: land, labour, capital and enterprise. If we've got even one person unemployed, that means we're not achieving Y1 or LRIS curve. In a classical world, what would happen is that one person would lower their wage demands to enable a business to take them on. That would mean we would achieve Y1. However, in a Keynesian world, let's imagine we're at Y2. In the long run, we might not get to Y1 because those people that are unemployed maybe can't lower their wage demands to get a job. Maybe there are minimum wages in place. Maybe trade unions will restrict them from lowering their wage demands. So we've got then an LRAS curve. What I wanted to do is to put an SRAS curve on the same graph as an LRAS curve. So we'll draw a big diagram for this one. So we've got real GDP and price level. Let's assume we're looking at a classical LRAS curve. On this, I'm also going to draw an aggregate demand line. I'm also going to draw a short-run aggregate supply curve. So we can see that in our economy, we are operating at P1, Y1. If we were operating at full economic efficiency, we would be working at Y star. So we can see that we have some inefficiency in the economy. Again, if we show this on a production possibility boundary diagram, the PPB represents Y star. The cross represents where we are. We have some inefficiency in the economy. What we can see now then is that if we were to increase the short-run aggregate supply, maybe by lowering wage demands or raw material costs, then what we will find is that we get closer to our production possibility boundary. Output shifts to Y2. Lower business costs mean that prices fall to P2. The economy is operating now nearer to its production possibility boundary line. So you can see there the relationship between an SRAS and an LRAS curve.